Well, I'm delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast today is Lesia Vasylenko, who is a prominent member of Parliament in Ukraine, and is a lady who has worked and lived in the UK as well. Lesia, it's really lovely to welcome you to the Godcast. How are you, and where are you?
Well, hello, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm in Kiev, very centrally located right at this moment, and I'm feeling rather well, much better than most people in Ukraine, I would say.
Okay, we'll obviously get to Ukraine in a moment. Lesia, I was just wondering, with your connections to the UK and the news in recent days of Her Majesty the Queen dying in Balmoral a few days ago. What's the response been in Ukraine? Has it landed there quite significantly?
Well, first of all, I'm truly sorry for the loss that the British people have lived through and are still living through. The Queen was a symbol not just for Great Britain, but she was a symbol for generations worldwide, Ukrainians included. And for us, the news of the Queen passing away here in Ukraine, we also took it with great sadness. This could be seen with the amount of flowers that were laid at the embassy's doors, at the British embassy's doors here in Kiev. And our news, despite covering the war by the hour, were also covering the death of Her Majesty.
Thank you for those comments, Lesia. I just want to ask you something on a really human level, Lesia. You're a mum of young children. Did you ever think that you would see a day in your life where your country would be invaded?
Oh, definitely not. My grandmother, who lived through the Second World War, she would tell me stories of how she herself, with her brother and sister and her mother, were evacuated from a village just 20 kilometers from Kiev, and they were taken as far out as Uzbekistan. And I listened to the stories of them going, and then the time and the challenges it took for them to come back to their country, with utter amazement at her courage, at her strength, and also thinking from early on in my life that, am I lucky not to have to live through this, and am I lucky not to ever have to live through this? And in these recent 6 months, I realized that I was very wrong. And one rule to go by in life is definitely never say never. Because unfortunately, myself and my children, we were unable to be that generation, or those generations of Ukrainians that would live without pain, without suffering, and without tragedy. Russia has done it again. It has brought on all of this human suffering upon generations and generations of Ukrainians, not just the ones who live today, but the future generations to come. Because, of course, my children will be speaking to their children, and I will be speaking to my grandchildren about this difficult time that we all had to live through and how we managed to survive.
How do you explain it to your children, Lesia? I wondered how Ukrainian families explain what's happening. Do they have any sympathy towards Russian people, or are the children told to dislike and hate their fellow children in another country? What's the kind of response as parents to children?
Actually, the children explain it to me. When this escalation of aggression first started, and on the 1st of March, a week into it, I made the decision to actually move my children to safety and move them across the border. My son gave me a really reasonable argument. He said to me, "Mom, look, I'm 8. For 8 years of my life, the war was going on in Ukraine. So essentially, there hasn't been a day in my life that I haven't lived without war in my life. And what's the difference now? How is it different now? Why are you making these decisions now? You never made them through the 8 years." And he is perfectly right. Neither him nor his two sisters, who are younger, never lived in a Ukraine without war. But of course, what we saw happening on the 24th of February and all the 200 days afterwards, it's something of a whole new scale. The atrocities, the war crimes, the rapes, the killings of children, they all have left a footprint, and a very strong footprint, on all our hearts and all our souls. And I grew up knowing the history and knowing how Russia treats Ukraine and how Russians relate to Ukrainians. So for me, I've made the choice not to actually think about Russians so much and not to waste my energy on them. I concentrate on the here and now and how I can help my fellow Ukrainians and how I can put an end to this aggression as quickly as possible. The Russians, they have their own issues to deal with, and I hope that they do. And I think that the victory for the Ukrainian army and pushing out the Russian soldiers from Ukraine will actually open up the way to freedom for the Russian people. But you asked about the children rightly, and I will also say that the children, it's something different. The children, they do not have the same history background, or they don't have enough information. So of course they take it in simplified terms. And of course the games of the children in the streets these days, they are Ukrainians fighting Russians, just the same as they see it in the news, just the same as they hear it in their communities, in their families, where sometimes you have fathers and sometimes mothers come back who have lost limbs, who have received wounds which will scar them forever until their days on earth. And of course these children, they play the good guys, the Ukrainians, killing and fighting with the bad guys, the Russians, pretty much as it was during Second World War, where you had the Germans and the British, the Allies, the whoever. It's exactly the same. I guess it's the same as it was always in history when there's wars between two countries.
Yeah. Have you noticed a change in your children since things got really violent, or not?
To be honest, for me, like for many mothers and for many parents in Ukraine, the pain is yet to come. The pain of seeing the traces this war has left on our children, because it definitely has left traces. The trouble with the way that tragedies such as wars affect our souls is that it's not apparent. You cannot see it like a cut or a bruise. You will see it in years to come. We will all see it in years to come. The psychological impact. Putin has actually laid a time bomb, a psychological time bomb on the psyche of all Ukrainians, young or old, big or small, but we are all affected by it. Some will be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Some will be suffering and are already suffering from depression and anxieties. And the same will go for our children. But because now my time is divided between my country and between my family. And I spend a lot of time away. And unfortunately, I cannot observe them day by day. And I do not have the physical presence to be seeing how they are acting or reacting. I just hope that in the years to come, I will have enough wisdom and enough knowledge and support and skills to provide them with the comforts that they need and that they lack and that they have been lacking in these 6 months.
Yeah. I'd like to actually just something that I've not seen on the news or reported in any way, Lesia, and that is the role of the church in Ukraine, and if there is a role, and if so, what is it, and how is that witnessed by people living there?
We could do a separate podcast on the role of the church in Ukraine. It's a very fascinating topic. To answer in short, the role of the church and the impact of the church on Ukrainians is huge. We are a very religious nation. okay, we maybe not necessarily in big cities you go to church every Sunday, but in smaller cities, in villages and towns, it's almost a must. And for the big holidays like Christmas, like Easter, of course, we go to church. And I can speak as a parliamentarian, so a lot of the legislation that is voted on in Parliament, it is affected. The church has an effect on that. Because of the religious activeness of the population, the church definitely has a say in what gets through and doesn't get through in Parliament. And in this war, of course, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church has played a huge role with the support they've been providing, with the volunteer aid and humanitarian aid they've been able to bring in. We have a lot of priests who have gone to the front line to serve as, in Ukrainian is called kapelans. I'm not sure of the English word.
I think probably.
Chaplains, yeah, that exactly that. So, and there's a chaplain in every company, in every brigade, and they serve together on the front line, and they are a must within the military unit. They are a must for the soldiers, for the men to feel safe. And I think we draw a lot of our energy and a lot of our confidence, and this community unity and strength comes also from the church and from the priests who are serving around the country, both in civilian and military capacities.
Yeah. And here in the UK, Lesia, in recent days, we are listening and we are watching of what's been described as huge gains in terms of land and miles and kilometers. Is that true? Is what you're seeing there and hearing there too?
Absolutely. I mean, finally, in the last 48, 72 hours, Ukrainians have more to smile about, and every day our smiles grow larger, and we are able to keep them for longer periods of the day. We are, I think, at over 6,000 square kilometers of regained Ukrainian land. That is towns, villages, cities, which are able to fly the Ukrainian flag high and proud, and reinstall these flags in the places where they should have always been. We have people embracing the Ukrainian soldiers who are coming in as liberators, people giving them food, flowers, just saying a heartfelt thank you for finally coming there and freeing them from the Russian occupants. But what we are also seeing is the tragedy that Russia is leaving behind. We are seeing evidence and traces of the war crimes of thousands of Ukrainians who were just killed, civilians who were just killed and tortured in different communities. And we have a new batch of work for international investigators to come to Ukraine to see it for their own eyes, and to be putting this evidence in a systemic way and transferring to international tribunals.
Did you ever think that do you think it's at all possible that Putin would actually stand on trial for war crimes, or do you think he would maybe end his own life, or other people may end it for him before that would happen?
You know, we must do everything possible as an international community, as a civilization, to make sure that Putin stands to trial, and that he answers for all the crimes, and that he bears full responsibility. It's important that he stands there at the tribunal, wherever it may be, and that he listens to all the evidence of all of the atrocities that were committed under his orders and under his command, and that the world listens to, and that the Russians listen to, as to what was being done to innocent people, innocent women, innocent men, innocent children. And this is necessary for justice to be served for those who have suffered, but it is also necessary for us as humans and future generations of our human society, so that they can go back, and when they are judging us in the past, that they can see that we were a fair, a just society, and that we did everything that justice could be served.
Yeah. Do are Ukrainians satisfied, Lesia, with the level of support from the West, or is there criticism about that? I know in the UK, you know, we are, like many countries, feeling the issues of cost of living and energy crisis and everything, and I'm always keen to remind people, well, whatever we're going through, it's nothing compared to what Ukrainians are going through. But do you feel the support is adequate? Is it improved?
Well, actually, Ukrainians are going through exactly the same as British people are going through. We also have a rise in prices. Our petrol has become much, much more expensive. It actually probably increased twice in price since the beginning of the war. We are facing a winter which is likely to be cold for many people, especially those people whose homes were destroyed and who literally have maybe 3 walls in their house, and their houses maybe don't even have roofs over them. But in addition to all of these things, where we need to start counting our monies, to start counting our pennies, Ukrainians also have to live through the burden of war, the dead bodies coming back and that we have to bury. We also have to live through having to give money to the military, to the army all the time, so that they can be fighting back and pushing back on the Russians, so that, God forbid, the Russian army doesn't approach the western borders with Poland and with other countries and doesn't invade. So we have the prices and plus that little bit more, which comes with the burdens of war. So we are very much hoping that there's still an understanding of the situation that we are in from the UK and from other countries as we approach winter. And I hope that as a human society, we can go through this winter, these 90 days, which are going to be difficult and hard and challenging for all of us and all our families, but that we can go through them together, holding hands in unity and supporting each other. And right now, Ukraine needs the support to physically fight off the aggressors and to physically fight off the source of all our troubles. And once that is done, I think that all of us together can again, in unity, go back to rebuilding a stronger Europe, a safer Europe, and a Europe where each nation is free to develop economically as best as it can.
Yeah, and somebody that's taken an awful lot of credit for that is our former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Was there sadness in your country when he was well, effectively removed from his position as PM?
Definitely. Boris Johnson was very vocal on Ukraine, and he did, by his activeness on Ukraine and his strong speeches on Ukraine, he also pushed other countries such as the US, Canada, all different European nations to act more firmly and more strongly. This, of course, materialized into weapon support, military support for Ukraine, in increased humanitarian aid, in increased financial assistance. But I think that Boris Johnson has done his job at least on Ukraine, and has done it really well. He has laid down a baseline for others to follow, and I think Liz Truss, who was part of Boris Johnson's government, and she was in charge of foreign policy. So essentially, I'm pretty sure that the ideas that Boris Johnson was voicing on Ukraine were coming from the present Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that Liz Truss will be able to take that baseline, which was established, and bring it to a level or two higher.
Yeah. And in terms of yourself, Lesia, on a personal level, how do you, and it's wrong, I don't mean to say how do you switch off, but you know, you carry this all the time, don't you? It's there as a daily event, daily reminder. Is it important for you to find ways of letting off steam or doing other things? Are you able to go to the cinema, for example, or you know, go swimming or whatever? Does life go on in some regard?
Life does go on, and to tell you the truth, it would have been impossible if it didn't. So I think the hardest moment for me was 2 weeks into the war, when I was able to to cross the border, and I was actually going to the extraordinary session dedicated to kicking Russia out of the Council of Europe, and that was held in Strasbourg. And when I arrived there, it was sort of springtime, sun was shining, birds were singing, people were sitting drinking coffee in the streets, and it all looked very peaceful and lovely. And inside of me, I was just boiling up with anger, with jealousy. How dare they, why can't they just sit there so quietly and so calmly when so many people are dying in my country, when I can't do that with my family, because I'm separated from my children, I'm separated from my husband, when I don't even know when I'll be able to do that. And I just started noticing these feelings, and that's the point where I thought, okay, that's not normal, because these people have done nothing wrong. They shouldn't be feeling guilty, and neither should I be feeling angry at them because they are living their life. And that's when I started realizing that actually 2 weeks of living in 24/7 war regime, war mode, is doing nothing good, and that's probably the signs are settling of a psychological disorder settling in right then in front of my eyes. And since then, I made sure that, okay, I'm getting enough sleep. Since then, I went back to doing sports. Sports plays a big part in my life. I try to do some exercise once a day. So I always start with a little bit of yoga in the morning. And since then, wherever I was, in whatever, I don't know, diplomatic mission, foreign trip, wherever I was in Ukraine, I would find the space and the time to do that little bit of exercise, just to get that little space for yourself. Then when in Kiev, when life restarted and when the restaurants were opening up, the salons were opening up again, little normality started coming back. You save that a little bit of space, a little bit of time for yourself. You find the space to meet with your friends, with your family, even if they say no to you. Sometimes I had situations where I just ended up turning up at a friend's house, just knocking at the door and saying, I know you said you don't want to see me, but I know that something's going wrong at this point, so like we're gonna sit down and talk whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
And this is, I think this is how we managed as Ukrainians to pull each other out of difficult situations as well, and provide this like psychosocial support, which is much needed when you are living through daily news of tragedies and of losses.
Yeah. Lesia, just as we come to the end of this interview, just give us, Ukraine is not historically a destination of tourism for British people. So we kind of just had this crisis landed on us without really, I think, fully appreciating Ukraine as a country. Just tell me what gives you great pride in being Ukrainian, if you would.
Oh, you just have to come and see. This is such a vast country. It has everything to offer. I think that every single British person who I know who came to Ukraine, even in these last 6 months, was truly and completely impressed, and not just at the people, at the resilience, at the courage, at the fact that we are still able to laugh and smile and remain positive through it all, but at the culture that you see here. Again, like very quickly into the war, just a couple of weeks went past and everything was reopening. Restaurants, cafe, bars, despite the curfew, people are working, people are having fun. I think it's the energy that the people bring to the places, and just coming here and experiencing it and living through it will be really, really enjoyable for anyone who finds the courage to come now. But very soon, I hope that Ukraine will be reopened, with the borders reopened and with the airspace reopened, and more tourists from Britain, from other parts of the world, will be able to come and enjoy the Ukraine that I love and enjoy so much.
Yeah, it's certainly a country that I hope to get to soon as I can afford to, and it's deemed safe to. And just kind of,
it's really affordable. Actually, the other point is that it's really, really affordable. I mean, compared to the UK prices, life in Ukraine is much more comfortable, and you can get a lot more for the same price, the same amount of money that you'd be paying for in UK.
Yeah, And I just want to quickly ask you about this term compassion fatigue, Lesia, because you know, as the days and the weeks and the months roll by, people kind of, I suppose, just it can sometimes slip off people's radar. If you can just speak to the people of this podcast and people in the UK who might watch it, what would you say to them about compassion fatigue?
I know it's hard because we are asking for support and compassion for an indefinite amount of time and in indefinite amounts. But we as humans, as living beings, we are in this together and we are fighting for the greater good. Ukrainians, like me, like my friends, like my family, we are fighting physically on the ground. We are risking our lives and we are doing it willingly. We're doing it for ourselves first and foremost, but we are also doing it for the greater good, so that Europe, so that the world can be that little bit closer to having more freedoms, to having more and better and safer future, and that little bit further from autocracy, from tyranny, and from torture and death and killings. And just knowing that you are part of this fight, that you are part of this struggle for the greater good, I think it's worth opening up your hearts to and your souls to, and showing that little bit of compassion for that little bit longer.
Thank you, Lesia. And I know you're a Ukrainian, obviously, and you're from Kyiv, but you lived in the UK. Do you miss the UK in any way? What do you love about your time living here?
In these last 6 months, so many things got reassessed and reevaluated, and in my life included. And I always thought that, oh, it would be great to come to the UK, to live in the UK, because I have attachments to the UK from childhood. And actually, my family found safe haven in the UK, in a family who showed us a lot of kindness and a lot of compassion, and has helped us through a rather difficult time. But when it is a choice being made without really having a choice, but because you have to send your children away to a safe place. Every time I come to the UK now, I don't enjoy it, to be honest. I see it as something that was forced on me, that was forced on my family. And in contrast, I have the feelings every time I go back home to Kyiv, where I am now, for example. Every time I open my own door to my own flat, to my own city, I literally kiss that lock. I hug the walls when I come in. I have tears streaming down my face, tears of happiness of how much I love my home. And it's true for many, many Ukrainians. So that also gives you a sign that we're definitely, wherever we are, wherever you're welcoming Ukrainians, they're not there to stay for long. At the first moment we get, at the first signal that it's safe to come back, that we will come back. Because it's that feeling of homesickness, but really sickness for the home that we have in our hearts, that will drive us back very, very quickly as soon as this war is over.
Well, Lisa, I can't really follow that. That's so eloquently conveyed, and your passion for your country is clear for everybody who will listen and watch this podcast. I want to thank you for your time and coming on, and I just want you to know that many of us in this country are praying and wishing for continued successes on the front line, and we think about your community and the soldiers who are doing so much to restore peace to your beautiful country, and just thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time in talking to me on the Godcast.
And thank you too, and Slava Ukraini, glory to Ukraine, as we say.
Glory to Ukraine. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.